Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sophia. I'm an American living in Paris, and today I want to start this journey with you all on explaining how exactly I moved to Paris, because 2 years ago I didn't know anyone in Paris hardly. I didn't know anyone in Paris. I didn't speak French, and now I work at a French company in French. I work in French every day. I speak, write, listen, take meetings 100% in French. I got my visa. I got 2 visas now. And I fully live in Paris, France. I moved from New York City 3 months ago-ish, like 6 months ago. It's kind of complicated, but yeah, I'm a full-time resident of France, tax-paying resident. So I've been through the visa procedure, the préfecture, and the special kind of processes that it takes to do something like this. So if that interests you, give me a subscribe, give me a like, and keep watching. These little mics are so funny. Anyways, today for my first video, I thought I'd share a little bit of my story and why I moved to Paris, before I kind of jumped into tactical reasons about how I did it. I was living in New York City for 8 years prior to living in Paris, and I had always had a natural curiosity about the city, and I had always wanted to learn another language, but it was always something that I kept on the back burner and just never prioritized, always found an excuse for. I'm sure you know the vibes. It's a super common thing to want to learn a language but not really know how or have the time and energy to commit to it. But my first time in Paris, I thought it was an amazing city. It was 2014. I didn't really think too much of it though, because I moved to New York City immediately after graduation and started working. My second time in Paris was in 2020, and right before the pandemic started. And I remember I had just gotten a job at Ralph Lauren on their events team, and I was like super excited to have a full-time job after a really long period of being freelance and not making any money. So I decided to reward myself with a trip to Paris. And in this trip to Paris, I remember I was running along the Seine, and it was a beautiful day, and I was suddenly just struck with this feeling of like, holy shit, I could live here. This feels really right to be here. And it was just such a strange feeling, so deep within, right in my heart chakra. I'm a very spiritual person, so do with that what you will, but right in my heart chakra, I felt something just warm and this really good feeling. And ever since that moment, I've come back to this feeling as a kind of calling to come here, because ever since that moment, actually, New York started to be a little less friendly to me. I think it was always kind of pushing me out and pushing me towards Paris. At least that's how I felt with my career opportunities and things that I was able to work on, which I had an amazing career in New York. I worked on the global events team at Condé Nast. I worked on many magnificent and grand Vogue events like the Met Gala and Vogue World, and started planning fashion shows, and that's how I kind of got international experience. And that was with a job based in New York, but life in New York never really felt like it was where I was meant to be long term. So I started really thinking about it and like what that would actually mean if I was to actually move and do things like that. And I remember for a long time I was just not honest with myself about it. Like I was hung up on an ex, and I thought maybe we would get back together, and what would we do if I moved to Paris? Like, gotta get back together. Yeah, so we were in a little bit of a immature mindset, I would say. But I remember it was like December 2021, I wrote a letter to myself in my journal, and I was like, hey, so it's time to get like kind of honest with ourselves. And I think you know about what. I think you know that you don't want to live in the United States anymore. I think you know you don't want to live in New York. And I think you know that you want to move to Paris. So let's fucking do it. And I remember in 2021, I mean, I had just started a new job at Condé Nast and I had no idea how I would do it, but I thought, okay, let's actually start manifesting. Let's start putting feelers out. Let's start seeing what we can see. Let's still keep getting experience so maybe we can transition this into an opportunity later. And that is exactly what I was able to do. So I started working on the global events team at Condé Nast, and we started working with, I was doing strategy with teams all over the world. So a lot of teams in Western Europe, Milan, Paris, London, Munich, Latin America, Asia. And it was really eye-opening and so exciting and interesting to be able to work with these teams from around the world and to be able to learn from them. And from there, I just kept thinking more and more and more internationally. I want to work on international projects. I want to meet these people in person in their home countries. I want to learn their ways of working. I want to be super open to these experiences. And slowly but surely, they just kind of started coming to me. And it was because of my own initiative, because I asked the questions to my manager to say, hey, is this opportunity something that I could maybe participate in? And it's something that I would encourage every employee to ask their boss, that if there's something you want to do, ask the question, ask, what can I do to get to this opportunity or to this position? And you never know what they're going to say. And if they're supportive of your career, they will actually think about ways to make these opportunities real for you. So I was lucky enough to have a very supportive manager. Shout out Kara, love you. And she was supportive of my opportunities and excited by my passion to work internationally. So we made that happen. My first kind of international stint was I did a 5-week home exchange with someone. So this girl who lived in Paris, she came to my apartment in Brooklyn, and I went to her apartment in Paris, which was significantly smaller than mine, but it's okay. It was a learning experience, and I got to stay in the amazing 10e arrondissement, which is the 10th arrondissement of Paris, right by the Canal Saint-Martin, for those who know Paris. Super trendy neighborhood, really fun bars and cafes and boulangerie and everything everywhere. So it was a really exciting neighborhood to be in Paris, and this was October of 2022, and it was that trip, and I got to work out of our Paris office. It was that trip that I started to feel like, okay, this could be my home. I love this. I love everything about it. I feel so connected here. I feel so myself here. I'm working on the language. By that point, I should say this because it's an important point, I really started to very seriously focus on learning French. And I was very dedicated to this. I knew it was something that I could do. I changed my mindset. I grew into, my story changed into, okay, we can learn a language. It is possible. I don't need to live in another country to learn a language, which is something that many people told me when I told them I was learning French. They were like, oh, you can't learn French if you don't live in Paris. Watch me. Watch me. And I did. And I didn't live in Paris when I learned French. I learned French to an advanced level without living in the country. Yes, I visited a few times, and yes, I was able to use those opportunities to practice more, but the majority of my French learning happened while I was still living in the US. So don't let people tell you or put these stories in your mind. They're limiting themselves. We don't limit ourselves over here. We do what we set our minds to over here. Anyways, so I had really started learning French, and so I was able to practice in October, and I was getting really good, honestly. And I was, people think French people are rude, but they're only rude if you don't attempt to speak their language. If you go into a store and you immediately start speaking English and you don't say bonjour, which is very important, they will be rude to you because it's rude in their culture. And we as Americans need to learn to adjust to other people's cultures when we travel and not be so ignorant and arrogant, my friends. So people were actually very nice to me. I found Parisians and French people super kind and welcoming, and I made new friends, and I was dating, and because I was single at the time, I started dating a Frenchman, which is a whole nother video, whole nother thing. Which it was all just like really exciting. And from there, I really set the goal. I wrote it down. I thought about it every day to actually move to Paris. And at the time, I had no idea about visas. I had no idea about any of the processes that went into getting a visa, getting a job here. In my mind, it was like, okay, you just have to get married or you have to go to school. Because any American who I spoke to who lived in Paris, they either went to school, which you get a student visa, and then if you're a student, you have a lot more advantages for people who aren't students and who are foreigners who come here, or they got married to a French man or French woman, which by default, you then get a visa to live with your spouse in the country. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to rely on marriage, or I didn't want to go back to school, so I had to figure out a way to get a job. And all this kind of fell into place later, but basically I ended up taking on a really exciting project at work called Vogue World, and the first year was in London. So I ended up actually living in London for 3 months, and I'm glad I had that experience because I was able to determine from there that London is definitely not my city. No shade to London or people who love London, but not my city at all. I mean, people are speaking English, even though it's with a British accent, which is still more exciting than the American accent, but like, it just wasn't for me. So I'm glad I had that experience, but I was able to come to Paris a little more frequently because I was staying in London. And then next year, I knew that we were going to be doing Vogue World Paris, which was a big fashion show that Vogue put on right before the Olympics in June 2024. It was a super ambitious project, and I knew that I was going to be able to segue that with my company into living and staying in Paris a little long term than like the 5 weeks, 3 weeks stints that I had done before. So I put together a business plan and I crafted a request to my managers to get a long stay visa to move to Paris, and they said no. So we had to get a little crafty with it. We had to figure out, first of all, we had to figure out a way to get our own visa. Me talking about myself in the third person. I had to figure out a way to get my own visa so I could stay in the country longer than 90 days, because as an American tourist, if you're not working in France or being paid by a French company, you cannot stay in France longer than a period of 90 days in a 180-day period. So you can't just stay 90 days, leave the country, and come back in the one day. You have to come back in 90 days after that. So I wanted to circumvent that issue, and so I ended up getting a tourist visa, which was actually super easy to get. I can explain it in another video. I just did it on my own completely, did the visa appointment. They didn't ask me any questions. They just sent me my visa, took a week, 5 days. I got my passport back with my visa stamped in it for my tourist visa, which I would not recommend that visa, and I'll explain why in the other video, for people who are actually wanting to come and stay in France, or even if you don't know if you want to yet stay, don't get this visa for many reasons. But that's a visa I got. I paid the price later, but we'll talk about that later as well. I was just thrilled because I was able to stay finally in the country longer than 90 days, and that was my goal, to be able to expand my network there, to actually live there, to be able to integrate more into society, be able to work on this project as well remotely from New York while in Paris with the New York team. Very complicated, but and I did it. I was able to do it. The only thing was I just had to come back. So after Vogue World was over, I went on a big vacation with some friends to the south of France, and then I was just in Paris for a little while. I didn't really do anything for the Olympics because I was just too tired from Vogue World, but my company expected me to come back after that, and I did in September, but I didn't come back with the objective of, okay, I'm here to stay. Paris is done, that project is done. I came back with a strategy. I was gonna ask again, this would be my 4th time asking HR and my team if I could be transferred to Paris. And I was told no, again. And I remember just being so indignant at being told no so many times that I couldn't, and just thinking like, okay, this is my job, this isn't my life, and now it's impacting something I want to do with my life. So how do we change this? And This is a very complicated situation, but basically I can explain it later maybe, but basically I knew I had to get another job. So from there, I told all my network that I had built up for the past year and a half of going to Paris back and forth on and off that I was looking for a job in Paris. Anyone that I had met through Vogue World, I sent them my resume. I said I was looking for a job. And I really hit the ground running with trying to find a job, not even knowing what kind of visa I could get or should get. Because if you're in a CDE, which is a full-time contract employment, then the company has to sponsor your visa, and you can have a couple different options within that. But if you're freelance or you're working for yourself, you have to create your own company, and then you sponsor your visa. You get your own auto-entrepreneur visa, which is what I ended up getting because I landed a job at a really big French company, a French brand. And the only catch was, while this was a full-time position, it's full-time freelance. So I still had to go the auto-entrepreneur visa route, profession libérale, and create my micro-entreprise. And that meant working with lawyers to do it because I wanted to make sure I do it right, and they also needed me to start very soon. So I hired a team of lawyers from this group called Lexity, which I wouldn't recommend because they were just really bad at communication and like simple things I felt like they didn't explain to me really well. And I actually ultimately think that I paid them more money than I should have because they kind of duped me into buying another visa package for the talent passport visa, which is not what I wanted or needed. I wouldn't recommend them at all. I think there's probably other people you could have found. I was just in a hurry and I literally Googled like lawyers, immigration lawyers in Paris, and yeah. Long story short, I ended up getting the visa. I was able to quit Condé Nast. How I got the visa is a little chaotic, and so maybe I can go into that a little later, but I ended up getting the visa. I quit Condé Nast, and in February 4th is my first like entry day into France as someone who's able to work in the country and get paid in euros. And yeah, I did it. I really just simplified everything here, but that's kind of how I did it and why. There's a lot of really nuanced details and a lot of different processes that I skipped over in this video because I want to keep it short for now. And anyone who has specific questions on different types of visas, I can go into it in another video for people who are looking to work in Paris as Americans. But yeah, I've been going through a lot lately. I started the new job. It's a very demanding job. It's events as well. And I'm adjusting to working in a completely new language in a foreign country, going through a really intense apartment search. I've had to move 2 times already since I've been here to temporary housing. I'm trying to get my name on a lease, proving to be quite the challenge, but we're getting through it. And yeah, I'm hoping to document everything here, and I really want to be a resource for people like me who want to move to Paris, who want to speak the language and succeed here, because I really didn't have much to find, or I was able to use a lot of YouTube resources, but I had to really scrap everything together and get a lot of information from a lot of different creators, which I would encourage you to do as well, because there's so much good information out there on the internet, on YouTube specifically. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. That was why and a little bit of how I moved to Paris, and I look forward to sharing more and hopefully being a useful resource for you on your journey to France, if that's what you choose to do, or if you're just interested in Paris content, that will be available as well. Thank you. Bye. Hey guys, Editing Sophia here. If you want to know everything I did to find a job in Paris, that video is waiting for you here. See you over there. Bisous.